Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Region 3-4 Roundtable webinar. This is new for us. We usually get to meet in person, and we haven't been able to do that for the last couple of years. We're planning to do it this year, and then COVID hit. So we are all virtual, and that leads to our first session on virtual P2 technical assistance, which I think very much is applicable to our situation. I want to thank Region 3, Peter Giovanni. I'm hoping he's on the call, and Lisa McCracken with Kentucky Pollution Prevention Center. Lisa has a little bit of the grant money left from our, let's see, Environmental Stewardship Center. We had our P2 RX Center that we, thank you. So we're utilizing that to plan these 3 roundtables that you're going to have over the course of the next 3 months. So I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, and she's going to moderate the session and go from there. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, thanks, Pam. Yeah, it's only been a couple of years that it's been gone, but it's the Environmental Sustainability Resource Center, ESRC. So, but as Pam said, we really intended to have a in-person roundtable, and there was funding in there for that, and it did not happen. And so we worked really hard a couple times, as many of you know, to try to put something together. And then this is just what it's come to. We were in the middle of in March planning something for June, and we all know what happened. So I'm glad that we get this opportunity to put the roundtable together, and it's really nice to have our Region 3, Region 4 folks back together. And I also want to say welcome to, I know we have many other regions and joining us, so we're really happy to have you. We really want to make this a session where there's a lot of interactive discussion, and that's always hard over the over video, but we're going to monitor chat and make sure that your questions get answered. But first, what I want to do is welcome our panel. And what we've done is we have 3 speakers, and I say speakers, just they're more discussion leaders. We have different questions. I'll ask them different questions. I'll ask one question, then each of them will answer, and then we'll open it up. And hopefully we'll get about 5 questions in today. If there's discussion going pretty good, I'm going to give about 10 minutes per question, and maybe go 15 at the longest, because discussion's what this is about. But we will move along. And at the end of after a discussion, we have a little time in there. Of course, we all know that's a little buffer time. But if there's any questions in there that didn't get a chance to be asked because it wasn't in the topic flow, we want to address those questions as well. And at the very end, we're going to ask for your ideas on the roundtable. We have a poll that's going to pop up. And I think let's go ahead with getting started. Put a poll up. We have our first poll. And before I welcome the panelists, just to give us an idea of what you are kind of looking for as you come in to be a part of this, what would be the things that you would want for us to hit on. So Meredith, you get the poll going?
Yes, so we have the poll going, and it looks like folks are starting to vote. So if you haven't voted yet, please go ahead and click over to vote. We'll give you another 30 seconds or so to vote at least.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Lisa.
Yes.
Lisa, this is Pam, and one thing I neglected to do was to introduce Meredith as our contractor out of headquarters that's helping us with ERG. So thank you, Meredith. You'll hear her popping in every once in a while.
Yes, good morning. I'm providing technical support today.
Okay, well, we'll wait on the poll results first. Keith, I want to introduce Keith Ridley. He's with the University of Tennessee. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning.
You want to tell us just a little bit about your organization?
I'm Keith Ridley. I'm with the Center for Industrial Services. We're with the University of Tennessee system. I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have 4 persons on our environmental team that provide audits and energy efficiency audits, environment and energy efficiency audits, and 4 people on our health and safety team. And the comments I make today will be around how those 2 teams function on online models.
Okay, thank you. David Ladner with Clemson University. Tell us a little bit about your organization.
Sure. Yeah, David Ladner in the Department of Environmental Engineering and Earth Sciences at Clemson University. And we began working on P2 type initiatives as part of our, or as the goal of our E3 program, or SCE3, South Carolina Energy Economy Environment. And myself and 2 other faculty members, Elizabeth Caraway and Michael Carvajales Dale, we kind of led that program. And then a few years after we began SCE3, we also applied for and were granted an industrial assessment center from Department of Energy. So we also run the industrial assessment center, and we have a staff member named Phil Litherland who does a lot of the work for the IAC. And then, of course, we have a lot of students that work with us, and they're writing their theses and whatnot, and doing the technical assistance along with us.
Okay, great. Glad to have you on the panels. And so Keith Goosen, who's with the University of Delaware, he's not going to be able to join us until 11. So when he comes on board, we'll do a brief introduction from him. But let's go ahead and get started with our first question. Okay.
So, Lisa, we have the results of the poll up if you.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, you want to, I'm not seeing the poll.
I can also read them out if you like.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind.
So it looks like the top pick was what technical assistance looks like after COVID with 65%, and then close on its heels, changing the traditional service model to meet client needs with 60%, and considerations and protocol for on-site visits during COVID at 58%, and then the other 2 at 40 or 42%. So pretty good split, but some preferences for sure.
Okay, so yes, we're going to be kind of covering each of those topics. So glad to know that we're on par with what you guys are looking for. All right, so first question, what adjustments have you made to your service delivery model to provide technical assistance to clients during the pandemic? Keith, you want to answer?
I can. We have every training program and every audit goes under review after a resource person has been out to see a customer. So where we are, we look in terms of 3 buckets, if you will. Our audit programs, which were traditionally 2-day programs, we try to get them to a half-day training, half-day audit program. So we try to take out a day and a half and put that online and talk to the customer online. We recognize that we think the value in our service is actually visiting with customers. So in our audits, again, it's basically 2 days down to a half day, and we've been pretty successful with that. We talk about how we are working with the customer, and we're trying to always gauge if the customer is being impacted by this new delivery model. So that's on the audits, the 2-day audits. We have some training programs in our environment side, and internal auditor, ISO 14000. We have been successful in moving that format completely online. We would traditionally have customers coming in face-to-face, sitting in a traditional classroom format. We have totally moved that online, and preliminarily we seem to think the customers like it. We get good scores on that ISO 14000 internal auditor training program. We did have to revamp that program, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit earlier. We go constantly reviewing training programs and audit programs. And then The third bucket, if you will, would be our technical assistance and training programs we provide to what I'm calling essential workers. So that's public utility, healthcare workers, construction companies. We have not integrated online into that bucket, if you will, because we're outside, we can create social distancing. And so maybe the big takeaway is we have segmented our training programs and audit programs, and we look very closely at how to or how not to, how does it work with the customer as far as online integration goes. COVID has driven all of that.
All right, I'll jump in there and say it's interesting. The first event that we had that was really affected was a manufacturing forum where we were inviting people to come to a central location and do a seminar sort of thing with various speakers from various industries. And that was March 12th, which we know was like a turning point, that mid-March timeframe. So we had not intended to deliver that virtually, to record it or broadcast it, but we got ramped up very quickly to be able to deliver that virtually. And at that time we were still doing in person. So several people did come. We did not have masks and all that. That hadn't yet happened, or we hadn't yet made that switch. But quite a few people came, and then we delivered it virtually. And I think that was an interesting effect of it. We were able actually to reach more people that way. And then after that, the technical assistance specifically was basically on pause for several months, but we have been recently working with wastewater treatment plants and drinking water treatment plants. And so we had 2 assessments in September. It took us through September until we were able to go back to on-site assessments again. And fortunately, those locations are outdoor locations, so we deliberately chose to go to these drinking water treatment plants that were outdoors for much of the site tour. And then of course we went into the various buildings, but there were just a couple people. We didn't take our whole student group that we usually take. We usually have 3 or 4 or 5 students, but this time it was just our staff member, Phil Litherland, and myself, who went through, and we took more pictures than we might usually take so that we could bring the information back to the students to write the recommendations. And then the water utility had their own protocols in terms of COVID and releases you needed to sign and things like that. So we followed those protocols, and the university had their protocols as far as travel and whatnot. Like, for example, we weren't allowed to have more than 2 people in a car. So Phil and I just drove separately and met at the site. And perhaps we'll get into other details as we go, but I'll kind of stop there.
Okay, thanks, David. So I know we all pretty much had that shut down, stop, don't go anywhere, don't do anything. I think we all were kind of, freaking out a little bit and figuring out, how do you do hands-on technical assistance when you can't be hands-on? So the other thing is, when it's shut down, I mean, how did you ramp back up? Did you, at what point in time did you make the decision? You both are with universities. The university make the decision. How'd that work out?
I'll start there. The university on a Friday, and I can't remember the exact Friday in March, informed us, and they followed the city's public health protocol. They informed us that we had to work at home. That was on a Friday. On Monday, with our essential, I talked about the 3 buckets with our essential customers, we were able to provide services on the following week. And I think what's important in that detail is that the university really allowed managers to make the best interest allow managers to make decisions in the best interest of the workers and the people who do the good work here and the resources. They gave us total flexibility in that. And so we met as a team, my peers, we met as a group, and we decided that no customer could pull us into a facility, and no mandate from the university, including managers, would push persons in an uncomfortable environment. So we allow persons closest to the customer to make decisions concerning their safety and health when they approach the facility. So the universities, the organization and the leadership we had here actually got that very right. And so in Tennessee, and I'll talk about some other buckets. In Tennessee, the public health departments in the major metropolitan areas are controlled one way, and then the ones not in the 6 major metropolitan areas are controlled and report another way. And we just needed the flexibility in order to navigate what the state was doing on that. Now, on our training programs, on our audit programs, we actually met as a team. It took us about a week. We were in the middle of an EPA grant cycle, and we met as a team to fit, and it was food manufacturing actually, and all of the things going on with food manufacturing at that time with shutdowns. That was our target. And we met as a group to try to determine how we would function. And basically what we said was, let's look at the 4 projects we had. What can we offload on an online virtual format? Okay, and we're able, we gather data, we don't visit customers. We think there's high value in the way we interface with customers, but we seem to be down to a half-day site visit just to talk with technical persons and make sure that we're seeing things correctly. So that's how we handle what I would consider the non-essential programs and audits.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes. David, do you have anything to add to that? In 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, the university was a little more conservative on our end. They really didn't want students going out or faculty going out. But we did continue meeting online, just switched our meetings to Zoom with the students, and continued making contact with customers and sort of planning for the future. So I think that was the idea for us, like working toward insight visits for the future. We never did find a way to do a completely virtual assessment with nobody going to the site at all. So that was our situation.
Okay, and I see Keith, you've joined us.
Yes,
Welcome.
hi, how you doing?
Glad to have you here. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, I'm
where you work.
Professor Keith Gosen from University of Delaware, Electrical and Computer Engineering, and I'm the director of the Industrial Assessment Center here, and a P2 grantee.
Glad to have you on board. And we just finished the first question. We're going to move along to the next one. Okay, what are you still trying to figure out? So we got everybody working, right? And we're doing day-to-day activities and planning and all that, working with clients. But what are you still trying to figure out? David, why don't you take a shot first?
Okay, well, I think what I finished with on the last question might be a good thing. It would be nice if we could do a completely virtual assessment where nobody had to actually go to the facility. But I think what that would require is somebody at the facility who is totally on board with what we're doing and willing to sort of take directions from afar to go and, take pictures of what needs to be photographed or sit with us and kind of work with us through the details. Now that things are opening up a bit more, we do have hybrid classes in session, and the school is allowing students to go in like limited numbers. Maybe we never will have to do a virtual assessment, a completely virtual, but I could see that as being really useful, not just now, but in the future. So I'll leave that as the thing we're trying to figure out still.
Okay. Keith Goosen, you want to answer that?
Well, I mean, I'm coming in here late, and I know we had a discussion last week about what's going on at our center, and to a certain extent, I'm not trying to figure anything out right now because, life has sort of gone on relatively normally starting in June for us, except that our audits are mainly for non-manufacturing sites at this point in our other programs. So, you know, we have a few other programs. We have a program for the nonprofits in our area, and they don't seem to have an issue with us coming out relatively normally in terms of wearing masks and doing a COVID check in the parking lot and that sort of thing. Also, the program we have with the Army National Guard, what has been going fine. We've had a few manufacturing, but they generally, I mean, there's not much to try to convince them in terms of us coming out. Either they're okay with it or they're not. And you can't do anything to convince them to let us in if they're not okay with it. And as far as figuring things out, I guess, what's to figure out is, what are the client areas that are still amenable to doing this? I mean, my impression of the manufacturing sites is that they simply can't tolerate any risk of having COVID introduced to their facility. So, I mean, my main recommendation here is that if within any grants that a center may have, the client type can be broadened, that would enable the most work to get done.
Okay. And for anyone out there, if it's not just questions, we really would love to hear, what you're trying to figure out to bring to the table. So it's not just us, the three just sharing what they have. Let us know what you're doing and how you're approaching this along the way. Keith Ridley.
Yeah, I'd like to preface my remarks in two buckets. One, impact the people and impact the customers. The people that work here, if COVID persists into next year, we're going to have to look at how we work with our customers. If a person is in a vulnerable high risk category, that's something that we're paying attention to a lot. I'm 57, we have persons my age and older doing training programs and audits. We want to pay attention to that vulnerable high risk category should our employees be in that bucket. So if COVID persists, that's a really big thing we're trying to figure out, how to serve customers on site with that demographic. As it relates to customers, what we're trying to figure out with them, we have this 57-year technical assistance relationship with industries that has been a face-to-face model. We really want to understand how this online and virtual aspect of the service delivery model we have affects that particular part of the relationship. We think this relationship that we have with industry here opens a lot of doors for us, keeps doors open for other services under the CIS umbrella. So that is what we're still trying to figure out, trying to assess the impacts.
It looks like you're muted, Lissa.
Oh,
Sorry. For us at the Kentucky Pollution Prevention Center, and it's trying to find the right kind of client to meet what our deliverables say we'll do, because it's just not as easy to to get access to them, and especially when you had on site, when you had like workshops ready to go, and that's how we get our clients. A lot of them, that is our recruiting, and not being able to do that and doing it virtually, you just don't have that same connect. So I do think that is a different thing for us, is really how do we get to where we need to go, and make sure we're doing and meeting the client's needs. So I don't know. I think that's just something that's going to come as we move along this process. So with that, and that could be a little bit of a challenge, what are your future challenges to serve clients? Where do you think you're heading beyond where you are right now? And Keith Ridley, you want to?
I will. I'll start. We have developed some pretty good resources to help companies, particularly in the initial moments or the initial weeks of COVID. We have a pretty good assessment document that we use CDC and CDC guidelines to develop for industries on how to open, reopen. And we have a pretty good assessment that we do online to help companies if they believe they have a gap somewhere in their COVID readiness, their safety, health gap. If they think they have one related to COVID, they can call in and we can help them online. But where we seem to be headed is we want to develop a 24-hour emergency response training program. If there's a COVID facility outbreak, we want to use an existing hospital emergency response plan that we have. We want to adapt that to kind of help companies that have a COVID outbreak. That's particularly useful to smaller companies. It seems like they need the resources. Larger companies have the resources in place to develop that. So maybe we're looking at what I'm calling 2.0, COVID 2.0. How do we find those needs? We think helping companies develop teams to respond is where we should probably go with some of our smaller customers, but we do plan to survey. We're developing a survey to figure out exactly what the next level of needs are. So it's kind of gray right now, but that's what we have right now.
Okay, David?
Well, just following up on that comment, I like that the Keith mentioned that he is developing sort of a product specifically for clients for COVID, like something to help them get through COVID. And I would say we have not necessarily come up with that sort of thing. So our future challenge might just be that the clients are, for lack of a better word, distracted right now, or they're focused on their core missions. And maybe they're not distracted. They're not letting themselves be distracted by side projects. And that's unfortunately what a lot of clients see as energy reduction and pollution initiatives, is sort of side projects that they can do when things are going well for them otherwise. Right now, everyone's just focused on trying to keep their companies going and keeping their customer bases going and keeping their employees healthy. And since we haven't come up with a key thing that is helping them accomplish those goals, or at least they don't see it so clearly that our efforts could help them in those core missions, I think that is the biggest future challenge that we have right now. Yeah.
I can actually interject here that I had a former client give me an email last week asking me about COVID and what can be done about it in his facility. And actually the only answer I have is sort of anti energy savings, you know, that to open up the outside air vents on all those RTUs to flush the facility with as many air interchanges as possible. You know, that's the only thing that I mean, I don't think there's any. He was asking about if I knew of any filtration techniques or anything like that, and I don't know of any. I've read scientific articles, but I don't think there's anything commercially that's been, you know, put through any paces. So in a sense, I was able to perform for him kind of an anti-energy audit, telling him how much it would cost him to open up his outside air vents in the winter and perform, you know, higher energy change, more air interchanges. And you know, I think that's going to be coming along a little bit more and more, especially as we get into the winter, that we might have to broaden our, it's not really broadening because it's just working in reverse. You know, normally we're like trying to reduce ventilation to save energy, and here we may, you know, put recommendations in to actually maximize ventilation, and our job may be, you know, not to save the facility energy, but to tell them how much it's going to cost them. And you know, the former client was, you know, pleased that I was able to quickly give him a rough answer as to, okay, how much is his bills, are his bills going to go up, and then he can move on. And you know, this was a commercial facility, sort of a retail facility in a sense, and he could advertise that, you know, they are performing, you know, COVID reduction through outside air interchange. So, I mean, that's at least one thing I can think of where, you know, we broaden what we present anyway. I mean, there's no real new technical challenges. I mean, it's just, you know, working in reverse that problem.
Right. Yeah, sometimes it's the logistics, right? It's the trying to figure it all out. The technical you can get, but the approach and the best way, most efficient way even. So Meredith, I think we've had some questions and comments come in.
Yes, so one question we've received was, one issue with conducting virtual assessments is that many of your senses are limited, making it difficult to detect common issues, i.e. can't smell potential leaks, can't hear out of character noises or leaks, etc. Are there ways to work around these issues? Not everyone that's familiar with the equipment or process, such as maintenance staff, will be able to attend the virtual assessment due to time constraints.
I'll open it up to the panel if you guys have any suggestions, or if somebody else has a suggestion to that comment, please include it in the pane.
Well, I guess I'll jump in and say that that's how we feel too. That's why we really haven't been able to come up with a great way to do a completely virtual assessment, sort of for that reason. But I guess our hybrid model is send fewer people and hope that those fewer people that are going are able to have their ears open and eyes open more or something. They need to be paying attention more than they would otherwise when you have a larger team to sort of look at everything. But maybe like I said, we're recording more photos and videos and trying to capture things digitally like that, and then other people can look at them. But I think you're right. There is no substitute for being there in person, or no perfect substitute. So, yeah.
I guess I can interject again here that I came in a little late, but we haven't done any virtual assessments, but we almost did, and that was going to be where a large industrial facility had inquired whether we could do a targeted assessment of their heating system. And in terms of, I mean, they were on propane, and of course they wanted to go to natural gas, and so what they wanted us to do was, just essentially one recommendation, or I mean, whatever it worked out to, report on their heating system, but going a little bit further in terms of, trying to obtain quotes and things like that, which we don't normally do, of course. So, I mean, the only thing I can say is that I think a virtual audit will only work if if it is highly targeted, because then you can obtain all the information remotely. I mean, you can of course get all the utility bills as we always do, but you can get all the model numbers and the layouts, and you could even get sophisticated and ask for temperature measurements and stuff like that. And it kind of makes sense that, I mean, if you're going to do a virtual audit, it has to be limited. it has to be defined, because you are defining what information you're going to ask for. When you go on a normal audit, you go out and all of a sudden you see, a big stream of hot water going down the drain. And you're like, okay, why is that happening? And, and so I think virtual audits could work if they were highly targeted, and that it might be productive to develop, some sort of list of, something like a boiler conversion. Probably fuel conversions are fairly ripe if to target for virtual audits, because you could get away with getting all the information remotely.
Okay. Have any responses come into that specific question, Meredith?
Not to that question, but we did have sort of a similar question. What were the most well-received online tools that you implemented for industries? And they're asking if you could share your websites.
Did any of you have something specific that you had developed? Keith Ridley?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. On our website, and I'll make sure that you have it. We had a tool that we developed with our manufacturing extension program here that is funded by the Department of Commerce. We work together with them. There are about 9 persons in our organization in that program, and we produced a COVID assessment document. It was distributed to our manufacturing customers. I don't think we get many inquiries into it now because we've advanced down the road a little bit with COVID, but in its initial stages, companies were really after that information. So I know that is on our website. And we also have a COVID dashboard on our website that has other resources and other links that are important, and I can make sure that you get that. So that's kind of the online tools we developed for this era.
Okay, and we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of the panelists' contact information and website following this. And if you have any specific links to the panelists or anyone, please send them to me at lissa.mccracken, MCCRACKEN, at louisville.edu, and I'll put that in the chat. So, Meredith, any other ones related to that, or what we've covered so far?
Somebody asked, how were you able to publicize your virtual site visit offerings to industries? Any thoughts on publicizing?
Yeah, I've got something to add there. We have a very good statewide e-newsletter. We put other content in there, but all of our COVID-related on-site training programs like ISO 14000, we make sure that we produce it in that monthly email to our customers. And also, we routinely talk to our partners, and we make sure that they know about the services that we offer and that we're here to kind of look beyond COVID if there are needs beyond COVID. So that connection to our partners and the e-newsletter are pretty much the way that we do it. I think we have some things in there this month, as a matter of fact.
Okay. David?
I guess I'll jump in and say real quick, actually, those 2 questions relate to each other because our online presence is something we're trying to continue developing. So ours is SC, or if you were to just Google Clemson SCE3, that's how you get to our E3 program specifically. And then Clemson IAC for the Industrial Assessment Center is our online location for the Industrial Assessment Center. And those have been good avenues for finding people. But I'd say, a lot of credit goes to our staff person, Phil Litherland. He's our assistant director for the IAC. He's really making phone calls and sending emails and doing that boots on the ground work to try to stay in touch with people. And then our model, we haven't advertised specifically a virtual assessment. I mean, we're just calling them assessments still, and then we've just changed the way we do them a little bit. But our model was to try to have some events during the year and get people in the room to talk about it, and really talking about other clients or other manufacturers, for example, and having them present case studies for what they're doing. And that's a way to get people in the room, and then we, or in the virtual room, to talk about what our offerings are, and then we try to follow up with those folks. And so it's really advertising the events that is advertising the program itself, and we build on that.
Okay, great. Anything else? Meredith, anything?
I think let's continue with some of our planned questions now, and then we can circle back to some more of the written questions later.
Okay, that works. All right, what changes do you think will continue after the pandemic crisis subsides? And this question comes from, you know, we found that we can do a lot online, right? We always did like utility bill analysis and you know, some of the evaluations, but we can extend that a little more. So, and limiting on-site time. So with that, how are your programs adjusting from where you are now? Are you all thinking about in the future, you know, and it will subside, right? We know it will. So how do you think what the changes you made now is going to keep, that you'll continue? So Keith Goosen, why don't you go first on this?
Oh, well, you know, I mean, I apologize that I have to report that our auditing model hasn't really changed that much. It's just our client focus has changed. So, you know, we of course always did, you know, the utility collection and analysis offline ahead of time. Well, I guess the only thing I can say specifically is for specific things. I mean, like lighting is the simplest example. We've been doing that ahead of time for quite some time now, even before COVID, where you know, we would procure layouts of whatever facility we were doing, and try and obtain you know, the lighting information ahead of time, so that we don't have to worry about that when we go there, and getting hours of operation for the different parts of the facility. So I guess, you know, there I might say that you know, generally moving to try and clear out as many of the sort of standard quote unquote issues or categories of an audit ahead of the audit. I think that's a good thing to do ahead of the audit anyway. It helps in COVID, and so that will continue.
Okay, David?
Yeah, we had a good experience with one of the treatment plans that we did because it tied in with a laboratory course I was teaching, and it ended up being the laboratory course where we usually take the students on a tour of the facility anyway. And so so yeah, the timing worked out well that we did a virtual tour of the site, and one of the operators or the lead operator, he put together some pictures, and they actually had some drone footage of the site, like showing some videos of the drone flying over. And it was a revelatory moment for me because I realized that the students were learning different things through this virtual tour than they would have through the on-site tour. And so now we have this recording of the virtual tour, and next year I can guarantee you that before I take the students on the actual tour, because we still want to do the actual tour, we want to go there. Like I said, there's nothing to replace that entirely. But I'll have the video of the virtual tour to see some overviews that you couldn't see on site, and to see some pictures of certain parts of the plant that you can't see on site, and the engineering drawings right next to the drone footage so that you can see the details that you couldn't see on site. So I think that is what's probably going to continue for us. Of course, it depends on the client being willing to sort of put that material together for you. But if we could do a virtual tour of the site before we go to our in-person tour, I think it would enhance things greatly. And I know a lot of times students and myself, we're wandering around a facility and it takes you a while being there before you start to connect the dots of where the material flow is and whatnot. If we could get that out of the way ahead of time, it could enhance our work a lot, I think.
What was the drone work? I mean, was that the company's drone or something like that, or?
Yeah. So again, this was just a fortuitous situation where they had done some.
You haven't obtained a drone that you send out.
We have not, but we've thought about it. Now,
Yeah, I mean, well, it's an interesting question whether you could, send a student out with the drone to the site, of course, park somewhere away from the parking lot. I mean, I guess there might be some rules about how close you could send this drone, but I mean, hey, I mean, I guess, I would agree, in lines with the things I said, anything that can save time at the audit. Well, in the age of COVID now, that's less time, you're interacting and potentially spreading the disease. After COVID, that gives you more time at the audit to find other things that you might miss otherwise. So,
sure.
Yeah, I think that's a neat idea.
And yeah, if you had your own drone or could find one that someone was willing to let you use, you could provide that as a service, because I'm sure the client would be interested in getting that footage for themselves for whatever presentations and whatnot they want to use too. So
David, I know that we had talked before and you mentioned that it took a 2-day site, 2 days out on site down to a half a day from your usual work with what you're doing before and after. So you feel like you're going to, I mean, what Keith Goosen is saying, there's nothing more valuable than in time, in office time to do things, but there's nothing more valuable than being there with the client face to face. So that's sort of, I think, part of the challenge moving forward is the happy medium.
Right.
And Keith Ridley?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, that is the case with us too. We're trying to find at what point does online impact our relationship with customers. We constantly pay attention to that. One other thing that I would offer is, to answer your question, we are constantly, and it looks like we will always be looking at the quality of what we're delivering online. That's one variable. We're going to be looking at the time that we spend with our customer to make sure it's valuable. Talking to a customer face to face is not like talking to a customer on a screen. It feels like a TV show, a TV program, right? And so we're constantly looking at those variables that may impact our relationship with our customer. One other thing that we have developed here that we're going to keep after this crisis is we have developed groups to look at online infrastructure. We have 7 or 8 different federal programs here. We're meeting to discuss this whole online detail, the technical infrastructure required, how presentations should be, how to use virtual technology. So that's something that has really worked well here. People are trying to find ways to serve their customers and serve them well. So I imagine that innovation group is going to be important in the future, and I support them. I encourage them. It's a lot of value add coming out of those discussions to help us move all programs forward here at the center.
Okay. Meredith, do we have any responses?
Yes, so we had a quick clarifying question for Keith. They asked, you mentioned that the audits were reduced from 2 days to a half day. Is the half day in person or online?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was David. That I had been speaking with David before and he had mentioned that to me. So David.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'll clarify a little bit too. We hadn't done 2-day assessments, but they were long days, many days when we would go there. And so really, so what's changed is that we typically had a meeting with, everybody involved at the beginning to kind of lay things out. And then we would go on a brief tour or, an hour-long tour about to kind of see everything. Then we'd kind of reconvene, and then we'd go out in our separate groups to look at the lights and look at the air compressors and look at, maybe a waste treatment system. And then at the end of the day or mid-afternoon, we come back and have another group meeting where everybody gets in the same room, and then we come up with our recommendations there. So basically, we're just cutting out the meeting parts, and we're just going and doing the targeted, counting lights, measuring air compressors and things like that. And then our goal was to kind of have the pre-meeting be all on Zoom, and then the post-meeting be all on Zoom. It sort of turned out that we ended up chatting with the client. We had just a couple people with us on the tour. We ended up chatting with them and sort of did all our discussion that we needed to do at that time. And we're still planning, once we get the report written, to have the post meeting. So yes, the in-person time was reduced greatly, but I'd say the emails and the communication and sort of the post meeting will probably end up being the same total amount of time, or maybe more time, more interaction with the client, just spread over a longer time period and done virtually.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We had two comments that are sort of related to that. Somebody said, we have worked with a POTW and had one of their operators collect video footage at each major component of the plant and provide a brief explanation of how it works. That sounds sort of similar. And then somebody else commented, we are currently asking our clients to send us equipment information, which we normally would collect during a visit. Clients have sent us motor lists, pictures of equipment nameplates, and lighting types and counts. What we can't do is take measurements like light levels or use of compressed air leak detection equipment, but it actually is a good exercise for the client to collect this info.
Excellent. Yes. And, do you find that there's a happy medium between, and it's client by client, what their needs are and how much they're willing to go and do that? Like some of the work, counting the plugs, which is very valuable, but, not the funnest thing to do, or what they think they should be doing. So that is really interesting. Those are some interesting tips, and those are the kind of things we'd love to hear more about. Yeah.
I'd say so much depends on the client. Like if you get a client who likes the fact that you're there and is willing, they're so great to work with.
Yeah. And don't you think too, if they have a really great need, they're going to do what they need to do during this time to make it happen.
Sure.
Meredith?
One follow-up question for William. Somebody asked, what metrics do you use to measure the quality of your online services?
Yeah, we survey and we look at what the customer writes in comment sections of the survey form, and then I can actually pull the form up, forward the form to you. We actually look at issues related to timeliness, thoroughness, just all the things you would normally look at in a normal customer relationship. But we really pay attention to written comments and really kind of burrow down and tease out anything that we think is problematic.
Great. One more written question at the moment, and this is a fairly specific one, but somebody asked, can anyone speak to how they may remotely assist collision repair industry businesses? So NEA number 3, code 8111. Would this be done via Zoom, FaceTime, or similar with a cooperating collision repair shop staff member showing, as an example, the practices employed in the shop to reduce pollution, sort of like a video tour?
Well, I'm thinking off the cuff here, but I like what Keith Goosen mentioned earlier about the targeted assessment. Like if you can think of a specific thing to work with the client on, and the one that comes to mind is compressed air. I feel like if it's a collision repair location, they probably have compressed air tools, and maybe you could work with them to even send them a data logger to look at their compressed air use. And if they could leave it logging for a couple weeks, then you could analyze the data after they send it back to you. Again, that's not a full assessment. That's like a targeted compressed air sort of study, but I think it's one thing that could be done.
Okay, thank you. And if anyone who's watching has anything to add to that, please include it in the chat. And what we'll do at the end, like there's some great questions coming in, great comments, tips. So we'll put any tips together with our links and resources. So we'll make sure to capture all that. All right, so then the next question. What's one lesson learned during the process that you would like to share with others? Oops. Keith Goosen, you want to take a stab at this first?
What's one lesson learned during the process?
During this process of trying to become a virtual technical assistance resource, essentially deliver a program that's hands-on, on-site, and taking it all, virtual. And
I mean, we haven't done one, so I don't know of any lessons I've learned other than we came close, but the client backed out. So I guess along those lines, okay, given that was the only time I came close was when the client wanted a targeted assessment on their heating conversion, that they wanted more than we usually deliver, in the sense that they wanted us to contact contractors and even come up with quotes, and so we were moving a lot more toward providing an end-to-end service, which may be a little bit reticent actually, because we're not kind of supposed to do that. So I mean, I guess that's my only lesson here is that to me, I mean, it seems like virtual points toward targeted, which it seems to point toward at the very least a lot more follow-up, not just doing the energy savings calculations and coming up with an estimate of implementation costs, but actually doing a lot more legwork and follow-up on the implementation, which is not so bad itself. It's just that I'd be sending students out to contact contractors and stuff like that, and I'm not sure how good of an idea that is. Actually, it's kind of a joke. The one lesson on doing on-site assessments during COVID, we did we opened up June 1st in phase 1, and our first assessment was at a large library, municipal library nearby our campus actually, and it was an all-day audit, and of course we were planning to wear surgical masks all day, and I kept wondering, how are we going to eat lunch? and the answer was that the client said, oh, okay, well, here you can eat lunch in this large, one of the large rooms, just spread out 6 feet and take off your mask. So I mean, it was kind of as simple as like, I was worried about something that really wasn't an issue. But so that's kind of a joke maybe, but it's relevant.
No,
but no,
I don't think the only one. I know we have had that experience, and Keith Ridley, I think we talked about one place that was similar, I think, where everybody spread out for lunch. You were wondering what was going to happen.
I can't remember the exact conversation, but one thing I would like to add to answer this question, we think it's really important in the process of delivering online to really allow yourself to be adaptable and flexible in how you approach online delivery. We have had successes and we've had a couple of times things weren't successful, but I think the big, larger detail is you have to communicate. It's good to get persons maybe outside of your immediate energy and environment bucket and get input from others and kind of learn the lessons from a larger group of persons. I think that cross-pollination, if you will, is very important in a process like this. So we've had a lot of successes. We've had some things that didn't go well. And what I offer is that you become comfortable with that. That's kind of unusual for a person, a scientist like myself, to, want variation and accepting things that don't have good outcomes. You want to fix it, but the important thing is to really learn, not be afraid to explore, and be okay with having a lot of successes and some things that don't go well, and really kind of stay in the game. That's something I learned about the process and myself.
Okay. And David?
One thing that comes to mind is just not specifically related to COVID, or it doesn't only apply to COVID, but the more capabilities that you have, like with your team and with your center, the more you're going to be able to do. Like if all you know how to do is count lights, then if you can't go anymore to count lights, then you're sort of out of work essentially. But one thing we've recently started doing was getting the power use data on more frequent intervals. So with Blue Ridge Electric and Duke Power, they were able to send the meter data, and their meter data comes in 30-minute intervals. And so we're increasing our ability to analyze those data and come up with recommendations from those 30-minute interval data. It's sort of like a big data analysis. And I sort of wish that we've been thinking about doing this for a while, but I kind of wish that we had already developed a protocol and a capacity to do that, because it is something that we could do virtually. We don't have to be on site to do this particular task. So, I mean, this is sort of a life lesson. Of course, the more you're able to do, the more jobs, opportunities you'll have in the future. And I think in that sense, specifically with COVID, and whatever future things occur, the more you have in your wheelhouse, the more capable you're going to be. So.
Right, good point. Yeah, I think we all were stretched beyond our limits and really have risen to the occasion to be able to do what we've done. So we're all doing it differently, but we're all doing a lot of similar things too. But I think that we're adjusting, and you continue. And it's interesting because of the answer to this question, other than lunch, is that's always been us, right? We've always had to be flexible. We've always tried to, okay, we presented this, how do we do it differently? So we're always learning lessons on how to do better. Now I'm going to go on to a question section now. So Meredith, if there were any questions related to that last question, or just open it up in general.
Yeah, so no written questions at the moment, but if you would like to ask a question out loud for any of the panelists, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll take some questions out loud. Okay, we just got a question in. What data collection tools or platforms for capturing interval data as well as monthly utility bill data would you recommend?
So that's following what I just said, so maybe that's a question I can address. So again, we're not super good at it. We're not super well versed at it yet. We just had them send us the data for a year of data. And we're looking through it, and I have a former student that's doing some analysis on it, and I'm not sure what platform he's using to do the analysis. I'm just using MATLAB code, or writing my own code in MATLAB to do the analysis. And there was a question earlier about what online tools and platforms are used, and I was trying to think, and I think most of what we're doing, we're just using our own Excel sheets that we have in-house, and again, MATLAB code for various things like that, interval data, compressed air studies too. Like I just have MATLAB code that I use to analyze the compressed air data logger information. I'd be willing to share any of that. None of it's user friendly though, of course, because it wasn't designed to be shared, but I'd certainly be willing to share what we have if people want to have that conversation.
Okay, great. Yeah, and if anyone else has anything to share, please send that in and we'll include it in our follow-up comments.
Was the question how to analyze utility data or how to obtain utility data?
Let me look back at the question.
Because I mean, I'm with David here. I mean, we just use Excel and a few simple mathematical tools to perform, like, you know, degree day analysis and stuff like that. But in terms of acquisition of data, what's very nice, I mean, and some clients will let you do it, is you know, give you access to their online accounts. And if they're ever able to, you know, I always ask. I mean, you know, I mean, some of them I think don't want to do it because they're worried about privacy. But if they're willing to do it, the sky's the limit in terms of what you can obtain online these days, and getting interval metering and everything else. So, you know, we always try to get that if we can.
Yeah,
that's
so
at KPPC as well, is to get the permission. And, you know, some, you know, are fine with giving over. Sometimes we have to do NDAs, you know, the non-disclosure agreements, to be able to get to that step. But that is the best way. Yeah.
Yeah, so follow-up comment from the same person. They said, we are currently using Siemens Navigator, but curious if anyone has experience with Portfolio Manager. So I think they're talking about tools to gather the data.
A portfolio manager is one thing that we do emphasize with our clients, and have found that to be a good tool. So I know that that's been a good one for us. And, you know, whoever, if they would like to follow up with me, we can certainly talk more about that.
Somebody commented relatedly, we work through the utility to obtain demand interval data should the client have meters to collect that data. And the utilities have various software platforms to analyze demand data. That's all of the questions and comments at the moment, Lissa.
Okay. Well, we're open if you have anything, as Meredith said, if you know, sometimes it's hard to do it over the questions. Payne, if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, that's fine too.
So
go ahead.
sorry, a question just came in.
Okay.
How has overall morale amongst personnel been maintained during the pandemic?
Ooh. Any one of the panelists, you want to jump into that?
Well, are we talking about the directors of the centers or the students? As a director of a center, I guess morale is okay. I mean, it's you know, it weighs on you constantly that you have this huge backlog of audits, particularly for the manufacturing sites that you have to do, and you know, I mean, having to place so much more of your time and effort and energy on marketing is, I don't think, good for engineers in general. but
Right. Yeah.
My students, you know, seem pretty happy though. I mean, because we're still doing work and getting things done, and so I mean, they seem okay with this. They've been able to adapt to a flexible workload, and you know, I have no trouble, you know, having students sign up for audits as they come along. So I think they're happy.
Keith or David, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, morale, I think, is very high here. We communicate at a high level. we have people that are strongly focused on public service. And so as long as we provide information and communicate, we don't have students working here. They're all engineering professionals, 30, 40 years. And as long as we communicate at a high level and give them information they need, timely information, they don't have a problem with managers and leaders particularly, but serving the customer is kind of where they're focused. And as long as we allow them to do that and have flexibility, don't push them, customers don't pull them in, they can make decisions about their health and safety. It tends to work for us. So we've got moderately high morale levels with the persons that serve the customers directly.
Yeah, I guess my only comment would be, I don't know for sure how the morale is. Maybe we need to do more analysis. But I've often found, you know, we all want something to do. And the only thing, I think the main thing that has sort of saddened us over the summer was we didn't have so many places to go and so many assessments to go on and so much work to do. We like to be productive, right? So when we were able to find meaningful tasks, meaningful activities for the students to work on, I think they appreciated that. And I think sort of as the managers, that has been our big goal. Like, let's think of something that will be useful and have the students work on it. One thing has been like website, you know, we had more time to go in and add some more things to our website and document a few things that we really didn't have time to go through and document before. So that's just one example of something we decided to work on, and I think help the students feel productive and keep their morale up.
And that's a very good point with the students. So at KPPC, we do have co-op students that work with us. We're not an IAC, it's just more through our engineering school. And that was, I think, the first challenge for us, because we have seasoned staff, we're project deadline driven, right? So there's really, you know, you're kind of self-driven, which is the way it's always been. But the students, that was really a bit of a challenge. And I will say Samantha Gordon, one of our engineers, took that on, and she, if anybody wants a copy of it, she put together a really great system to approach working with the students, and, you know, the regular check-ins and types of responsibilities and duties, and, you know, that's a challenge. So just let me know. And I think the morale is so high with my staff, nobody wants to come back in ever. So I do know in our organization, we'll probably be looking at more remote, you know, more of the hybrid incorporating. But one of the things with us is we do have students, and that's been the biggest disservice of all, is just not really being able to have that on-site experience or even insight management experience. But okay, so we're going to move on now. Future topic ideas. So Meredith, if you'll go ahead and put the poll up. We were wondering, you know, what you all thought as far as topic ideas. This one came up pretty easily, obviously. We're all trying to deal with how to deliver our services, but you know, what do we want to talk about on the 26th, and then the third and final one on the 7th? And so by looking at this poll, this will help us, you know, determine a priority. There's so many on there, and they're all very, very good, and I think equally would be a good discussion topic. But we're really looking for what's in your wheelhouse, where you need assistance, where you feel like you need a therapy session or self-group session. And also there's an other, and if you choose other, we are going to have a survey pop up afterwards. So if you would please just explain what the other was, and that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so the poll is open. Please go ahead and vote if you haven't voted already. We'll give you a little bit longer to get a chance to get your say in.
So while we're waiting, I'm just going to kind of go on to the end wrap up part. There is going to be the survey. The session was recorded and it will be available on EPA's website. As I mentioned, we'll pull together, just specifically comments and resource links and anything that would be helpful with you as you're trying to do your work. And also on the survey, this is the first attempt. It's very hard to have a roundtable virtually. And so if you have any suggestions for different approaches, different ways to do it, please include that on the survey too. We're looking for the input. This is meant to be helpful, and we want it to be definitely beneficial and value added to what you're doing.
So Lissa, would you like to share the results of the poll, or what's the plan?
Let's see. Go to the poll.
Would you like me to, I'm asking?
No, I can. I see it. Okay, so it looks like we're kind of tied with breweries and in the behavioral aspects. Then there's TRI, and further down there's ISO and wastewater. So yeah, I do think, and that's a really good perspective, because we all we know we can go in there and give them all the technical information in the world, but unless they're putting some sort of organizational structure in there to help with that, teams and communication with the facility, with the staff and employees, that's just huge. That's just part of the equation. So that's interesting. Okay, so we'll take that into consideration, and definitely appreciate your feedback. And like I said, on the survey, if there's anything that you want to do to help us, do better next time, or other topics on here that's not on here, please feel free to share. And Pam, before we sign off, just wanted to see if you had any last thoughts.
Hi, Lissa. I think this was a great conversation, and I'm really glad that we were able to provide the roundtable. Looking forward to you guys' feedback. Please provide some. It would be nice to know what we could do better, because we do plan on having 2 more of these, and we want it to be very interactive. So I want to thank the panelists for being on here and being on the screen. It's been terrific to watch everybody, and thanks, Lissa, for your moderation. And that's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you, panelists, as she said, and Meredith. Appreciate you keeping me on track with the questions. And with that, we'll go ahead and say have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks.
Thank you all.